Growing up, my first consoles were the original Xbox and a Nintendo DS, so I may not be the point of authority to make this statement, but I believe Kirby's Adventure to be one of, if not the best NES game, and certainly in the top 3. Zelda, Mario 3, Punch-Out, and Final Fantasy were also super impressive for their time, but the other worlds to run into, the side activities, like the arena, some fun little mini games that would become staples in the series, it just does so much so well, including its boss roster, which, while I will give the edge to Punch-Out there, I think this game does a fantastic job. There's a total of 8 bosses, though I'll be putting in 9 entries, which we'll cover in a little bit, and all the different options you have with your copy abilities or choosing to just fight as Kirby solo, it gives a lot of variety and it all actually works pretty well. Now, I won't be tiering these bosses because this is once again a very old game and I'm not quite sure how well I could tier that, but just know that with one exception, I actually do like pretty much all the boss fights in this game and I think it's good. This is another game like where Kirby's Dream Land, I do have nostalgia for it, thanks to the 3DS eShop and the 3D Classics version of this game, though for this video I recorded it on my Nintendo Switch. That's enough rambling, let's get into the boss ranking with the one boss that, let's be honest, we all know sucks. Number 9, Heavy Mole. Of course, even if most of the bosses hold up well, Heavy Mole is one I'm glad has been left to the Stone Ages, because this fight is borderline Shadow Realm tier if I was tiering these fights. The idea is actually really cool. The boss creates the arena that you move along, and you have to keep up with him while getting in some hits yourself. However, it completely falls apart because of one big reason, and that is instant death. The auto-scrolling is fast, so you can pretty quickly get crushed by the janky geometry, and this will quite easily send your ass back to start with one less life, or in Boss Rush it'll send you back to Wispy. Plus, he can go up and down quickly, which will create bottomless pits or kill ceilings, which will also one-shot you. And if you get hit, you're likely to get knocked down, which can also spell instant death because you might get stunned for too long and take the damage. It's a very intense fight, but not in a fun way. I respect them trying to make something unique here with this boss, but it was definitely too ambitious for the time, and it might even be too ambitious for these days. I'm kinda glad it's been left to the Stone Ages where it belongs. Number 8, the arena battles. I decided to put these in here as kind of a space for the mini-bosses. The arena battles are perfectly serviceable challenges against somewhat cooler looking palette swaps of the mini-bosses you see throughout the game, and yeah, they work well, as slightly more challenging opponents than the absolute speed bumps you come across along the way. And the reward for victory is always a useful power-up like a maximum tomato, as well as a ability. So, I think it does help make the fights a bit worth it. And overall, I think for what they are, they do a good job. Number 7, Wispy Woods. Ah, Wispy. An iconic boss to be sure, but not one that's really noteworthy in this game as he just shoots air and drops apples. It's even easier than his fight in Dreamland because how much bigger the arena is here, and it does look extremely nice for NES standards, but there's not much for me to really say about this fight. He doesn't really evolve until Kirby Superstar, where I think there is at least a start of change, and he becomes more of a unique and iconic boss going forward. Number 6, Kracko. Another returning boss from the original, we have Kracko, who I feel kinda conflicted on. Now, he's got 2 phases, which makes the fight stand out more, but the first phase is kinda got some of the same problems Heavy Mole does, where it's way too easy to instantly die if you miss a single high jump. Now, it's not bad for me now that I've beaten it a couple of times, but you can't see the clouds above you until after you've made the jump, and by the time you make the jump, Kracko may or may not have already broken that layer. I don't know. It's not a terrible idea in theory, but it is kind of stressful. Now, getting to the final cloud and fighting Kracko proper is fine, as it's the Kracko fight, just like the original, but now he doesn't take up a quarter of the screen, and you have high jump, which admittedly does make the fight a little more exciting, at least for me, because you're not waiting for him to drop out a single enemy you can shoot at him. Now you're kind of taking the fight to him on your own terms, which is pretty cool. Number 5, Meta Knight. And just like Krakow, Meta Knight is another boss designed around a specific ability, and is potentially a cool boss that gets held back by the simplicity of Kirby's Adventure because there's no combos or anything like that to experiment with in this game. You just kinda attack. So the best strategy is often just to spam him down and hope he doesn't counter too much. But it was still a solid enough template for the boss that Superstar would build off of heavily, and it is kinda cool getting to see a pre-Galaxia Meta Knight. And also, it's really cool to know that he still uses his basic sword as a sidearm to this day because, well, he has it in Forgotten Land. Number 4, the Paint Roller. Now, the Paint Roller is kind of the progenitor for bosses like Adeline and Paintra, being a foe that brings their art to life, and this different art gives the Paint Roller a decent variety of attacks, with different ways they interact with the arena, from the baseball gunning it straight for you, the cars bouncing off the walls, the thundercloud flying around and dropping lightning. And then you have things like Waddle Dee, which is just acting like a Waddle Dee. Overall, it's a pretty cool idea for a boss that, while not as iconic as his successors, I think it holds up well enough, and it does give the boss a good bit of variety, even if it can be a bit of a pain when you're doing a no abilities run, like in the arena. But at the very least, you can get Bomb and Spark out of it thanks to, well, the Thundercloud and the bombs he can drop. Number 3, King DDD. My favorite boss from Kirby's Dream Land is back, and basically the same as before, with one new attack in tow, where he will try to fly into you, and this is to keep you from just air camping him, essentially. It's a fun boss that I enjoy quite a bit, and I like how you think he's going to be the final boss again before the crazy Nightmare Demon is released, and it turns out DDD was actually protecting everyone the whole time, and his pride got in the way of explaining the situation, as he and Kirby were not friends yet by any means. I do, however, have two big issues with this fight. The first is his health bar is too big. It takes multiple hits before it even starts going down, and even after that, his health bar is, well, even after his health bar is gone, it's still going to take more hits before he actually dies, because it's a lie. I don't know why they do that, but whatever. The other issue is his music, or lack thereof, because in the original Kirby's Adventure, it's just the standard boss theme, which is honestly a shame because while I get the NES and Game Boy had different hardware, I do wish he could have gotten his iconic boss theme here, but sadly this is like the one fight in the series where DDD doesn't have his own boss theme, even if it's not his regular one. Like, even Kirby 64, which had a new song for him, was still a unique track to his fight. Number 2, Nightmare. Now, before we actually get into talking about the fight, I just want to say, look at how well animated and expressive these sprites are on Kirby and DDD. You can get their personality without any dialogue here. This is an NES game. Anyways, Kirby is known for a few things. Great music, throwing hands with a penguin and a tree, and being God's strongest soldier to slay the nightmarish hellspawn that pop up in Dreamland, like Syphilis. And this is where it began against Nightmare in a two-phase boss fight, with phase 1 basically being a space shooter, starting the trend of Kirby final bosses being these big events and spectacles that change the gameplay style up a little bit. And here, you're falling from the sky while absolutely laying into the Nightmare Orb with the Star Rod, while the background continues to change its appearance as you need to be quick, as the ground is getting closer and closer, and yeah, you are on a pretty harsh time limit here. If you run out of time, you're dead. Phase 1 is pretty easy once you get used to it, but it can be a bit tricky until then. Though, once you beat him, you get to my one big issue with this fight. It seems that regardless of the version, if you don't grab the Warp Star immediately after killing the Nightmare Orb, the game consistently crashes. I've seen it happen on Virtual Console, I've seen it happen on Nintendo Switch, I've seen it happen on the 3DS version. It's a minor inconvenience when you save state right before the crash. It's pretty debilitating when you don't have save states and have to beat both the Orb and DDD all over again. But after some technical difficulties, Nightmare reveals his true form, and honestly, I think the introduction is pretty awesome and speaks for itself. Now, in this form, he's going to be much more aggressive, as he's no longer being an evil ball, but he's an evil nightmare monster thing with a mustache. His cape provides him some defenses, so you need to hit his body while he's attacking you in order to do any real damage, but each hit you can see him recoil in pain, so that's actually pretty cool. And even better, as his health gets lower, he actually modifies his attacks, increasing the bullet spread, or changing how his flying attack works entirely. Just keep attacking him and unleash the power of Christ, and before too long, he'll be the one awaiting final judgment as your game is complete. But the ranking itself is not finished just yet. Number 1, Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright. As far as I know, this is the original duo boss, predating the likes of Ornstein and Smo, and many others by multiple decades, and if this isn't the first duo boss, I don't care. These two are a really well done duo fight with how they coordinate their attacks. Mr. Bright loves his Hadokens and just bum rushing you, while he'll take to the sky. It not only becomes daytime, but he'll unleash the wrath of the sun upon you. Meanwhile, Mr. Bright tends to hang back a bit more, throwing out lunar blades to hurt you, only really going for a charge attack when you're either cornered or he's cornered you. But when he takes to the sky, he'll rain down the shooting stars. I love how the arena changes from day to night depending on who's in the sky at that point, and them tagging out keeps the fight from feeling unfair or boring because their sky attacks are designed with the foe on the ground in mind. I unironically believe these two laid the groundwork for many of the great gank bosses we see today. Well, I'd say many, but there's really not a lot of them. And they still hold it up pretty darn well in my eyes. It's a fun boss no matter how you choose to go about it, and in my pick, it's the best boss in Kirby's Adventure. And that's all I've got for this video. It was fun revisiting this game, and I can recommend it if you have a passing curiosity about probably the most important Kirby game, as this is where the series really went from basic platformer to the mini-game filled charm fest with copy abilities, hub worlds, and terrifying demonic forces to kill. The game is pretty easy to access, but if maybe the NES version seems a bit too old for you, then I would say consider giving the GBA remake of the game, Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland, a try. Either way, that's all I've got for now. Some more boss ranking should be on the way very soon, and the Dark Souls 3 recording has begun, so that video will come out eventually. Keep an eye out. So, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos of varying quality, consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.